Today we're going to talk about clothing collections. All right, I know you guys have seen videos on this before, but I feel like all of the videos on YouTube currently talk about how to get your tech pack done and then find a manufacturer and then get your sample done and then place your bulk order. Today we're not going to talk about that. Today we're going to talk about how to actually build and engineer a clothing collection to put money in your bank account rather than leave you sitting with inventory that did not sell. We're talking clothing collections that consistently sell out and drive revenue and progression for your brand. Now, I feel like I can speak on this because I used to do random collections where I would pick this product, pick that product, and pick a couple of products over here, throw them together, call them a collection. And after a few times failing and being left with a shit ton of unsold inventory sitting in my storage unit, I decided to shape up, figure it out, and learn to be tactical. And since then, I have dropped, I believe, 13 collections, and all of them have sold out with the exception of 2. And we have done upwards of $150,000 within 30 minutes of opening our website. It's because we got it figured out. I'm Marshall. I'm the founder of Tame, Psychotic, and my brand has been mentioned by AvantSpace as one of the fastest growing clothing brands of 2025. We've done tons and tons and tons of drops within the past year, grown to 50,000 followers in about a year on our brands page with no ads, no influencers. We have built an amazing community that support us every single time we drop. And I can say that I know a little bit about what I'm talking about. And today I'm going to break down exactly how all that happened with collections, from how I categorize products strategically to my design approach to how that approach led to creating my highest selling items that have really driven revenue for the brand and pushed us to where we are today. And you know what? It all starts before we even design a single piece. So before we get into designing and developing these pieces, we need to understand the purpose that each piece serves in the collection, right? Every item has a purpose, and the purpose needs to be very finite, very distinct, very understood by the owner and the marketer. See, most clothing brands just kind of throw together a bunch of designs and hope one thing sticks, and it doesn't work like that. That's how you end up with dead inventory and super inconsistent sales, which causes financial volatility, which causes a brand to die. See, you need to think of your collection kind of like a basketball team, right? You wouldn't put 5 centers on the court and expect to win. Each piece is like a player that has their own role of play, right? This piece can't do what this piece does, right? And vice versa. And this piece over here also serves a different role, and together they work together and create something that is intriguing, that drives sales, that really tells a story, that brings narrative, that brings value to the collection and really gets people engaged with your brand. So I use what I like to call the Team Skew framework, and it basically explains how every single piece in my collections falls into one of 5 categories, and each one of those categories serves a different purpose that collectively result in a sellout, right? Consistent sellouts. So category number 1 is going to be your signature items, right? Signature item is kind of like your items that only you make, only your brand makes, right? That nobody else can really touch, that nobody else can really do as good as you, right? These are your unique selling items, unique selling points. I like to call them like your superpower items. We have kind of 2 specific types of signature items, one of them being our graphics style. We have a very ERD kind of like aggressive, a little bit edgy graphic style, and the other being the patterns for our denim. Right? We have a lot of people who really love our denim, specifically for the fit, how they sit on body, the length, the distressing patterns, the clasp at the waist, right? Where there's a lot of bits and pieces, the heel bite, the fading, the wash, the coffee stain threads. There's a lot of details that our denim provides that not a lot of other brands provide. And these pieces in the graphic style, they took a while to develop, which kind of gives us that edge because another brand can't go and directly develop that because it took us a long time to get these pieces where they are today, which is why they're special, why they sell well, and why they are now a signature piece per se, right? So category 2 is going to be kind of your key pieces, your brand essentials, right? These are going to be the pieces that make your brand like instantly recognizable, that people see, the same energy from consistently throughout, the course of your brand's lifespan. It's going to be the pieces that help people recognize and maintain like your identity, the brand's identity in their head. For us, that's going to be vintage washes on our t-shirts and our hoodies. It's going to be our distressing patterns. It's going to be the fact that damn near everything we do is either worn, distressed, or washed. It's going to be this kind of vintage feeling that you get from pretty much every piece that we drop, whether it's a t-shirt, a jacket, a hoodie, a pair of denim, a pair of sweats. It's kind of got that older, vintage, timeless kind of feel, right? And that's a, recognizable element that people see from my brand, consistently through every single collection, right? So those key elements or key pieces are really, really necessary. And you can definitely, categorize pieces from your collection into that. And those are super necessary just because it provides consistency, right? When you have consistent output, consistently recognizable output, people are really drawn to that. And it feels more finite. It feels more real. It feels more like trustworthy, right? It's not like you're trying to do some trend or something to kind of fit in, right? It's like you're in your own lane, and people really like that. Now, category 3 is going to be your profit generators, right? These are going to be your money movers. These are going to be the items that you can sell that have the leanest margins, right? The best profit margins. You get the most profit for the least amount of cost, right? So for example, if I have 2 items, I charge $100 for both of those items, but one of those items costs me $90 and the other item costs me $20. The item that costs me $20 is the one I'm going to make much more money on, right? So that's going to be a profit generators, right? And every single brand has a profit generator. Every single successful brand has its profit generators. We'll take the brand Amiri, for example, right? Amiri produces a ton of different types of clothes, high fashion, streetwear, perfumes, scents, right? But 90% of their profit, right, comes from fragrance and the Amiri jeans, right? But the founder, Mike Amiri, he actually hates the Amiri jeans, but that's their profit generator. That's kind of like their money driver, right? And every collection needs those pieces because that's what's going to ensure that you actually, make money, make profit. It's going to be the safest pieces, the pieces that have, the best sell-through rate while also, maintaining lean margins. For us, that would be our denim and our sweatpants. We have pretty decent margins on those two, as well as our accessories. We have really good sell-through rate on those, as well as good margins, simply just because accessories are typically cheaper to make. Jewelry brands have great margins because, jewelry is typically pretty cheap in comparison to what you can sell it for. So yeah, you're going to need your profit generators, obviously. Category 4 is going to be your traffic drivers. These are going to be the pieces that aren't necessarily meant to make you $1 million, right? But they're more so meant to kind of get people talking, right? To keep your brand cool, to keep your brand creative, to keep your brand kind of trying new things and constantly, catching the eye of your customers, catching the eye of, customers that are within, other industries, right? That are outside your total addressable market, right? Your total addressable market, your TAM, is kind of like who your brand speaks to now, who your brand appeals to, the pool of customers that can potentially buy your brand, right? And when you're making these kind of like attention grabbers, these traffic drivers that are going to be shared, right? Maybe they're not going to give you a bunch of profit. Maybe they're not going to be super wearable items, but they are going to be the items that kind of get people talking. For us, that would be like, the Muay Thai shorts that we did a month ago, right? Or would be kind of like the rugby jersey that we're doing right now, or the parachute slacks that we're developing, or, a cowhide jacket, right? Stuff like that. It's harder to wear, it's harder to sell, but it's cooler, it's more interesting, it takes more effort, it's more creative, and it gets people talking. You need those because that's where you're going to kind of get your eyeballs and get your clothing and your brand in the midst of like other conversations, right? And that's super, super important. And then category 5 is going to be your collection builders, right? These are the pieces that kind of work cohesively together to kind of give that like collection feel, right? They kind of like are easy to buy together. And this does 2 things. Number 1, it kind of gives people a more kind of pulled together, tied together kind of feeling when looking at your collection, at your deck. And 2, it gives people an upsell incentive, right? So if they buy this product, they might as well buy this product because those products go so well together that it's hard not to, right? So for us, a good example for that would be in this previous collection we did Junkyard Dog. We dropped a lighter and we dropped an ashtray, right? We did both of those items. They both work so well together because, you know, like having a smoke, you know, if you're gonna get the ashtray, you might as well get the lighter too, right? If you're gonna get the lighter, it's like, oh, like if I'm gonna get the lighter, I'm gonna be smoking, and I might as well get the ashtray too, right? So those pieces kind of work cohesively together and kind of give people like that feeling of like drawing the lines in their head and like, oh, this goes with this, like this is a collection, you know what I'm saying? And again, it's an upsell incentive, gets people to buy multiple items rather than just like one out of the collection, which is really, really nice. Okay, so now that you understand the framework and the necessary pieces that need to be put together to make a successful collection, let's talk about the whole design process, right? The process of actually making the details of the collection. So step number one, you need to start with yourself. All right, you don't need to worry about what this guy over here is doing or what this brand over here is doing or what Balenciaga is doing. Start with you. Okay, start with your wardrobe. Start with what you're wearing. Start with what's in your closet that you go to every day, right? I like to design for myself first because I am the brand and the brand is me, right? Because I am the creator, I'm the creative director. Therefore, my taste is the creative output that creates the brand, that makes the brand, right? I want you to think about it like this. If you went to somebody's house and you open their closet, you would immediately understand a lot about who they are, right? Do they really enjoy collecting watches? Are they a sneakerhead? Are they more into that LA fashion? Are they more into the New York high fashion? Are they more into the Paris, high fashion scene? Are they more lackadaisical with their wardrobe? Are they, a Hellstar kind of guy? What's their vibe? Who are they, right? Look at their closet. That's who they are. And your brand should kind of work the same way, right? Your brand should be kind of an identification point. Your design language and SKU selection should kind of be representative of who you are. For example, I am a huge fan of vintage. I love vintage. I love vintage band tees. I love Harley Davidson, and I love vintage thermals. I love fades. I love off-whites. I love distressed graphics. I love distressed denim. I love vintage washes. I love faded leather tags, right? I love all of that shit. And so my brand is going to project that, right? Because that's what I like to create, and that's who I am, and that is what my taste, prefers, right? And when you have a taste for something, whenever you like something, you are going to put so much more creative energy into it, and the energy that you do put into it will be much more pure, much more driven, much more precise, right? Because you love it, right? You shouldn't be creating products because you think that guy will love it, right? You should be creating products because you love it. That's how you design the best products. That's how you make and develop the best products, right? Products that you love, products that you have conviction in, products that are going to give you ideas for cool marketing campaigns and make you a good brand owner, a good creative director, right? It's all about the love for it. If you don't love making clothes, if you don't love being creative, if you don't love what you're creating, then you're gonna fail. Like, I'm sorry, but most of you guys will fail. That is if you don't actually like and believe in what you're creating. Now, step 2 is the iteration process. All right, because sample number 1 is never the final sample. Typically, it takes us 2 to 3 rounds of sampling for specifically cut and sew development. For graphics, we already have a pretty decent set of experience under our belt with that, with our manufacturer. So sometimes it'll take a time or two, depending on how the print files come out. But typically, with most of our items that we do, we need 2 to 3 iterations to get something perfect, right? So your first iteration will be probably bad, right? But I believe kind of the thing that separates a good designer from a mediocre designer is your ability to revise, your ability to take a bad sample and make the decisions on what's going to make it good, right? And if you guys want me to do a video on that, then drop a comment, if you guys want that, and I'll make another video in the future. But yeah, this is a process that you can't skip. You need this process, which means you need to give yourself time. You need, time for development. You need to be patient. You need to be patient and wait until you get that that piece that's like, oh shit, we made it, we did it, this is perfect, you know? And step number 3 is going to be testing, right? You need to kind of send feelers out to your audience, to, you know, the streetwear market or the, you know, gym wear market or whatever market it is you're trying to serve. You need to kind of, you know, send out feelers and testers to see if your product has, you know, some proof of concept, right? To see if people even want your product. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to commit to full production runs before you, again, have some data that supports a bulk order in the first place, right? So again, you're gonna wanna put out feelers. You can do this on Reddit, on TikTok, on Instagram. Essentially just post your designs, all right? Show your designs, whether you do it on an R&D page, you know, a backup page, a personal page, whatever it is. Make sure that people actually fuck with the designs. Even just ask your friends. You know, get some feedback from your friends. And then once you have kind of some supporting data, then, you know, you can put stuff on the production lines. Now, step 4 is going to be your production quantity strategy. All right. Now, you're going to want to essentially predict how many units you can sell of something. And I'm going to tell you right now, the number 1 rule of thumb is go lower than you think. Always go lower than you think. You got nothing but time. You can always redrop something. You can always do another drop with another product where you want to sell, you know, that number that you have in mind. It's not about the money. In the beginning stages especially, it is not about the money, it is about data. It is about data. Your priority should be getting as much data as possible, not getting as much money as possible. So you need to be dropping as many different types of items as you can at as low quantities as you can, right? Initially, in the beginning. And then once you go further into it, once you get better at it, right, then you're gonna wanna start adjusting quantities, right? Bumping up quantities of items that you know are going to perform well, bumping down quantities of items that previously didn't perform well. So again, the priority should be in the beginning going as low as possible and dropping as many different types of items as possible, because this is how you get to find that signature piece. This is how you find these pieces, all those categories of pieces that I mentioned before that you can include in your collection. You have to find those through testing, and testing is done through repetition of execution, right? AKA dropping a bunch of different types of items over the course of time and figuring out which ones performed best. All right. So in the beginning, it's going to be testing. And then once you get further into it, you're going to want to pay special care to those traffic drivers, right? Keeping those low, and those revenue drivers, keeping those high, the ones with clean margins, because you can afford to not sell those, right? You can afford to not sell the items that have lean margins, because you have to sell less items to at least break even for the purchase order on those items, right? So, you know, if I have, again, you know, an item that I sell for $100, it costs me $20 to make. It's way easier to break even on that item than the item that I'm charging $100 for, but it costs me $90 to make. That's where you can get risky, right? Your revenue drivers, but more so your traffic drivers, the ones to get eyeballs, the special items, maybe the ones that you like a little bit more. Let's be a bit more safe with those, all right? And if you guys want further, you know, kind of like strategy on that, we'll discuss that in a future video, but I did want to touch on that so you guys can kind of have at least a starting point and an idea of kind of like where to go initially in the beginning. Now, I want to talk about brand consistency, right? Creative consistency. Because creating individual pieces is one thing, but creating collections that are cohesive and aligned with your brand identity over time is a completely different thing. All right, creating collections and pieces that really are unmistakably yours, that people can see and they're like, oh shit, yeah, that's that brand, right? Or that's that brand. That's a whole different thing. All right, so you're going to want to basically maintain the same DNA across all the items that you make. For example, if you're going to stick to, you know, Western high fashion, then stick to Western high fashion. Don't venture into LA fashion or New York fashion or maybe Miami fashion. Stick to your Western high fashion, right? It's about finding a lane and then staying in that lane. The way that we do that at Tame Psychotic is by essentially first defining that lane by one kind of like umbrella variable, right? And for us, that's like, you know, 90s vintage, you know, 80s, 90s, early 2000s vintage. That's kind of our lane. All of our pieces kind of stick to that aesthetic, right? The ringer tee that I'm wearing, you know, these beat up, you know, old faded blue jeans, like all of the pieces that we make, they stay in that lane, which gives us kind of like that consistent, recognizable DNA. And I can't really stress how important this is, because the biggest thing that I have that most brands don't have is a high return customer rate. All right, in our last drop, we had a 63.3% return customer rate, which is insane. That means that 63.3% of our customers for this drop have bought from us before and are buying from us again, right? And that's where my superpower is, right? That's where I feel we've done things right with my brand, with Tame Psychotic. And the reason is because we've remained consistent, right? We stay in our lane. So people join that lane and they like everything that we offer down the pipeline because we stay consistent in that lane of like that 90s, early 2000s, you know, kind of masculine vintage type shit. And on the flip side, something that we would probably never drop is like a Nike Tech Fleece type item, right? Where it's like super tracky, super, you know, athletic, super slim, tight to the body. Like we would never do that shit because it's not aligned with the stuff that we've been dropping, all right? And a lot of this is, you know, kind of common knowledge, and maybe I'm speaking to a bunch of dummies, but this is genuinely something I had to learn. Maybe I was a dummy, right? So it's something I wanted to cover and make very, very clear, since we're talking about collections and, you know, producing cohesive lines that really further your brand identity and like stick with your brand identity, right? And one thing I kind of want to talk about is the evolution of your items and, you know, your product development, right? Because over time, you're going to want to provide fresh ideas to your audience, right? You're going to want to provide, you know, new items. You're going to like develop taste in a different direction maybe, right? But the thing you want to keep in mind is anything fresh that I drop, anything new that I drop, can it be worn with something I've dropped previously? Can it be worn by the same people who buy from us every single time, right? Because what's important is that you keep those people who bought from you last month buying from you this month, and buying from you next month, and buying from you the month after, right? And introducing fresh ideas to those people that are actually going to intrigue them, because it's kind of in the same lane, right, that they like to stick to. So you're going to want to essentially always kind of keep a hand on, you know, consistency within your lane when introducing fresh ideas, new items, new development, right? Because that's the fun and exciting part, you know, about building a brand, is introducing new ideas. Like we're doing footwear soon, right? We've never done footwear. We've never done footwear, and the company that we're collabing with maybe isn't quite up our alley, right? But what we can do with them can be consistent to what we've done previously, right? And can be, you know, kind of a healthy progression, you know, of what we've done consistently. And that's what really matters, and that's what you want to keep in mind. Now, everything that I just taught you guys doesn't just work for $1 million brand owners, all right? It works for beginners. It works for people starting from zero, which is why I'm talking about this. I know that a lot of the guys that I'm talking to in this video are going to already have brands, already going to be a little bit far along, but all of these principles are so important to know early on and implement early on, because they are detrimental to the long-term growth of any clothing brand, any line, any fashion line, right? It's very, very, very important to understand these concepts and be implementing them from the start. And to prove it, these are all recent results from brands using this exact framework. And some of these brands started 90 days ago. Some of these brands started literally only 3 months ago. Now, I love these guys. These guys are all a part of my clothing brand community, Urban Unity, where me and my team kind of just hold these guys' hands while they walk down this journey, right? We kind of like give them our experience. It's me, 5 other brand owners, and a bunch of CSM experts. We really like to hold these guys' hands as they walk down this journey and kind of hand down advice and experience that we've gained in the past years from just fucking up and, you know, learning all this shit trial and error. There's never really been an education opportunity. At least there wasn't for me. Maybe there was before my time, but whenever I was learning all this stuff, there was no education opportunity. I learned pretty much all of this from myself and maybe 1 or 2 select others that I talked to from other brands, and just experience, right? Screwing shit up, learning shit along the way, testing shit, all right? And I'm really good at testing, but a lot of people aren't, and a lot of people will fuck up in the beginning just like I did, and a lot of people will make mistakes just like I did. I've lost tens of thousands of dollars multiple times screwing up, and one thing that I wanted to do was essentially kind of like give people an opportunity to bypass that, right? Give people an opportunity to skip the whole, you know, scary stage of losing your entire shit in the snap of a finger like I did back in 2023. I lost $30,000 in a day because I screwed up and I made a wrong decision. And I don't want that to be, the case for you guys. I want to give you guys a fun journey, give people, within my community a fun journey, which is why I make these YouTube videos, why I have my community, and why I really love just teaching and, handing down value and trying to be, something of a leader amongst the clothing brand community and the next wave of brand owners that'll really permeate the space, through to 2030, 2040, 2050. I hope to be kind of like another Virgil figure here in the future, kind of doing my best to mentor, the younger generation and the people who will, maybe share a similar dream to mine. So if that is something you'd be interested in, hit the link below. All the information's down there. You can get into it. And if you do get to the application process, don't be lazy with it. All right, really dig in, okay? Because I don't work with everybody. I don't work with many people. And if you're lazy about your answers to the questions that I ask you in the application process, I'm going to consider you a lazy brand owner. And like I've covered in many videos before, lazy brand owners don't win. Lazy brand owners don't build brands. Lazy brand owners don't build empires, okay? I want to build an empire. I want the people that I work with to build an empire. All right, so let's do that together if that's something you're not interested in. If not, stay for the content. I'll be dropping lots and lots more value here in the next couple of weeks. About to get my new studio. As you can see, I'm filming in the clubhouse office space provided by the community that my house is located in, which isn't great. The audio is not great in here. It's not pretty in here, but I will have my home studio built out very, very soon. I can't wait to show you guys my journey walking into this next fourth quarter. I hope to bring my brand to levels we've never reached. We've got some awesome collabs coming up, some awesome items coming out, some really, really cool development in store right now. And yeah, it's going to be awesome. I can't wait for you guys to see it. I will see you guys in the next one.